magical. Public speaking takes you to the top. No more dreaming. Makes you a world-class.
Welcome, everyone, to Off the Cuff. I am Adam Banks. Thank you for listening to the show. This is another special edition of the podcast because this is another communication lecture series episode where I choose a communication topic and give a brief lecture over it. Today, we're going to be talking about special occasion speeches. There are going to be times in your life where you are going to have to speak in public. There are many situations to where you are going to have to public speak. Some of those special occasions include a eulogy, maybe a graduation, maybe a speech of introduction, maybe presenting an award, maybe receiving an award, a motivational speech, an inspirational speech. There are several. So what I would like to do is talk about each one of these speeches briefly. The first speech I would like to talk about is the entertainment speech. This is the most non-formal speech that you can give. This is a speech where it provides amusement or diversion for the audience. Often this speech is called the after-dinner speech because people do this type of speech after a formal dinner. It's a speech where you don't lay a lot of heavy information on your audience. You're not going to get up and talk about protons, neutrons, and electrons and the Pythagorean theorem in math because that would be too heavy for your audience. This is where you would get up and maybe tell a story, in other words, a narrative, or you would get up and tell jokes. Yes, this is where a comedian would fall under. It would be under an entertaining speech. The rule, though, to doing entertaining speeches is you have to be descriptive. Like if you're going to get up and tell a narrative or a story, make sure that there is enough story for you to be descriptive of that story. And the same goes with your jokes. The second type of special occasion speech would be a speech of introduction. This is a speech where you will introduce the speaker. A lot of the times when there is a keynote speaker or a big speaker at an event, that speaker is always going to be introduced first. And that is what a speech of introduction is. It is designed for one speaker to introduce another to an audience. There's a couple of responsibilities that you have if you are introducing the speaker. You will first want to mention the speaker's name several times. You will want to do this because you want to make your audience aware of who is about to speak. Get it marinating in their mind who is about to get up and talk to them. Another thing you should do is give background information. This builds credibility for the speaker. So if you are at an event where you're learning about how to fight forest fires and house fires, and there is a firefighter there as your keynote speaker, you will want to build his credibility. You will do that by, getting up and saying, okay, this guy has been a firefighter for over 15 years. How many fires has he put out? That's the type of information that you will give about the speaker because the audience deserves to know and wants to know why that speaker is deserving enough to get up and talk about the subject. The other thing you want to do is interview the speaker in advance, and you will want to do this for a couple of reasons. One is you will want to verify the name and pronunciation of the speaker. Sometimes people spell their name exactly the same, but will say it completely different. You will always want to say the name the way the speaker likes it. Make sure the spelling is correct. However you got it written down, you don't want to say the wrong name. Another reason you want to introduce the speaker is you will want to tell the speaker what you plan to say. And the reason you want to do this is how terrible would it be if you got up to introduce the speaker and you gave the same icebreaker that he was going to give, or you gave the same joke that he was going to deliver. Could you imagine how embarrassing that would be for the speaker to sit back there and be like, oh no, he just stole my joke. So to avoid that from happening, give a brief overview of what you're going to say when you introduce him and get a brief overview of his speech. That way you make sure that you cover all bases. It is your job to set the proper tone when you introduce a speaker. If it's a serious speech, be serious. If it's a funny speech, you can be comical yourself and tell a few jokes if you want. If it's a joke speech, you can be funny. If it's a joke speech, you can be serious. If it's a serious speech, be serious. If it's a funny speech, be funny. If it's a funny speech, be funny. If it's a joke speech, be joke. If it's a joke speech, be joke. If it's a joke speech, be joke. If it's a funny speech, be funny. 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 If it's a funny speech, be Keep it short. Remember, you are not the speaker. You are just the one introducing the speaker. Do not make the speaker regret that they chose you to introduce them. You will also want to avoid exaggerations. For instance, don't get up there and say, this guy is the funniest guy on the planet. He will have you rolling out of your chair. Don't say something like that, because what that does is put pressure on your speaker to feel like that he has to live up to that. It's okay to give your opinion of what you think of him, but don't tell the audience to expect something. It's just too much pressure on the speaker. The next type of speech to talk about, the next type of special occasion speech, would be a speech of presentation. This is when you are about to give out an award. You are about to present an award. The speech of presentation should include the following elements: background information about the award. Talk about the award. Talk about the history of the award, where it came from. Number 2, the criteria used for selecting the recipient. Talk about how come the recipient is receiving it. What is the criteria for this person to receive this award? And third and lastly, the achievement of the recipient. The achievements of the recipient, Meaning you will want to talk about what the speaker has done, why they are deserving. Sometimes during a award ceremony, you will wait to the very last minute to introduce the award, to build suspicion, to gain interest, and you will wait to the last minute. Other situations, you will present an award because everyone in the room already knows who won it, so there's no surprise. If you have that case, you can talk about the achievements of the recipient. If not, you just announce the recipient's name and they come up and accept the award. Which brings us to our next special occasion speech, the acceptance speech. There's a couple things you want to do while accepting a speech. Number 1, thank those who played a part in achieving your honor. Number 2, thank the organization giving you the award and recognize the work it is doing. And number 3, be brief. The reason you want to be brief is because there are other people probably going to receive rewards, and if not, the show has to move on regardless, and the program must continue. The next type of special occasion speech is the speech of tribute, and there are 3 popular types of speeches, and we'll go over all 3 of those: wedding speeches, toasts, and eulogies. And there is a rule of thumb for those speeches of tribute, and that is that all of those should always be positive. Those speeches are designed to convey gratitude, respect, and admiration. So let's go over those speeches. We'll start with the wedding speeches. If you are going to give a wedding speech, you will want to focus on the couple. Remember, it is not a speech about you, and it's a speech about the couple. And sometimes it's easy to veer off while giving a speech and to start talking about other people. But remember to always resort back to the couple. It's about them. Be brief, but not too brief. You want to get up and prepare something longer than 30 seconds to a minute, because you want the couple to know that they were actually interesting enough and worth enough to prepare a longer speech. 3, don't say anything that could embarrass anyone in the room. Don't bring up ex-boyfriends. Don't bring ex-girlfriends. Don't get up there and say, hey, remember that time I hooked up with your wife before you proposed to her? Don't get up and say that, because you got to remember who's there at those weddings. It's people's parents. It's their grandparents. Sometimes their children, family, friends. So be respectful in that environment, always. And number 4, consider using an appropriate poem or quotation. Why? Because people love poems and quotations. For some reason, people always love a good quote or a poem. Usually at the end of a wedding speech, you always give a toast to the couple. Which brings us to the next speech of tribute, the toasts. Now, I'm not talking about toast where you're standing over a bottle of Jack Daniels and a shot glass. This is the more formal toast. These situations could happen at retirement ceremonies, banquets, celebrations like anniversaries or birthdays. places like that. When giving a toast, you always want to strive for sincerity and warmth. Don't read a toast. It's okay to have a note card if you want to, have bullet points. But if you're going to give a toast, you don't want to read ever. And usually you give toast with no paper at all. It should come from the heart. If anything, memorized. Avoid all forms of teasing. You might have a certain banter or jokes that you get away with one of your friends, and only you two really kind of know how to take each other. Well, you got to keep in mind that not everybody in the room might, understand your relationship. So you might say something, and that could really irritate or rub someone else in the room the wrong way, or it might make them feel uncomfortable. So avoid all forms of teasing just to avoid anything like that. And finally, the eulogy. Eulogy is a speech of praise for a friend, relative, or colleague who has died. A eulogy should focus on the person's good deeds. Obviously, you don't want to get up there and talk about all the bad things a person did in their life. And you want to get up and you want to talk about how this person enriched their lives. Talk about the inspirations and the lessons that we drew from them when they were alive, and what kind of legacy did they leave behind. Your words are so powerful during a eulogy. It is such an honor to give one because you are there to speak on behalf of someone who can no longer speak. And you have been given that honor to speak to the family and to the friends, and it is your job to comfort the family kind of in the eulogy. Okay, on to the next special occasion speech, an inspirational speech. An inspirational speech has a goal, and that goal is to stir positive emotions to help the people feel excited, uplifted, and encouragement. And finally, the last type of speech is a commencement speech, and that is a speech that you give at a graduation. That can be considered or also known as a motivational speech, because that is basically all you are doing during a commencement speech is motivating your audience. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of the Communication Lecture Series. I am Adam Banks. I want to thank you for listening to Off the Cuff Podcast. We will see you in the next episode.
Magic of public speaking takes you to the top, no more dreaming. Makes you a world-class speaker. This a complete system, ain't nothing easier. I used to be shy, never had a clue.